Counter-Narrative News, bringing you daily news today on Friday, the 28th of April, 2023. Happy Friday and a Jummah Mubarak to all of our audiences. First of all, going straight to Sudan, the clashes between the two neo-colonial supremacist forces of Hemedti, of the Rapid Support Forces so-called, and the head of the Sudanese army, Burhan, continue to clash in the Sudanese capital in Khartoum. It is a conflict that is inflamed by all kinds of regional and global powers who are all part of the problem and not the solution for the Sudanese workers and peasants at the grassroots who have conducted a revolution to overthrow military rule back in 2019. So there's a panic and there's a great competition between all of these basically colonial, neo-colonial powers. On the one hand, you've got the West posturing as some kind of, they disagree with the kind of conflict in Khartoum, but they are vested in the violence there. Of course, Western imperialism doesn't want a civilian rule of the Sudanese people that seeks to control its labor resources and mineral wealth for the interests of the Sudanese people. No, not at all. And that's why actually the Western leading states are using the regional actors to in part conduct their strategic interests in Sudan. So, for example, Saudi Arabia has poured billions into Sudan in terms of the fertile agricultural land around the river Nile. Saudi Arabia on its part is running out of water, and Sudan on its part has a healthy agricultural output in which Saudi and also the United Arab Emirates, who are actually allied to Hemedti of the death squad forces, supremacist forces of the RSF. So you can see that the Sudanese people at the grassroots have no friends at all, and they should be very vigilant in some of the very devilish, hypocritical, very manipulative approach by states of Western Europe and North America, in that they will be trying to manipulate the grassroots through funding and political posturing, but they are all vested against the core interests of the Sudanese people. Then you have the long-time CIA asset from Eastern Libya, General Haftar, also working with the racist death squad of Putins and Perosians from Moscow, that's Wagner, looting Sudanese gold, helping to slaughter Sudanese people by allying with the death squad forces of the RSF. It's a very sad state of affairs, but our solidarity is ever with the Sudanese people. Going on some news to Britain, the chair of the BBC, Richard Sharp, has resigned, having been exposed of being vested in deep corruption, of being absolutely instrumental of an £800,000 loan to Boris Johnson. This clearly pertains to the fact that the BBC, while posturing as some kind of independent public broadcaster, is absolutely a leading part of the political, cultural, social arm of the British colonial state. It is a viciously but very sophisticated neo-colonial white supremacist institution. It's sophisticated because it manages to convince people that it is, some people at least, through its kind of posturing as colonial liberalism, that is not what it is. A very sophisticated media propaganda arm designed and generally successful in delivering the British state's colonial strategies and agendas and policies. Going over to Portugal, the president of Portugal, Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, has, for the first time of any Portuguese government state leader, argued that Portugal should apologize for its historic involvement in the colonial enslavement, genocidal colonial enslavement of African peoples. Some more than 6 million African people were people trafficked in a brutal project of dehumanization and enslavement from the 15th to the 19th century. Indeed, Portugal was a pioneer, along with the Spanish, the Venetian interests, and also the colonial capitalists from Genoa and Britain in a joint enterprise with the Spanish Queen Isabella in their colonial adventure, and then brutal genocidal policies in Africa and the New World and further afield. Nevertheless, the president of Portugal currently is under pressure from the Brazilian president Lula, who has made some criticisms in regard to historic colonial crimes of the Portuguese and also the current racism against Brazilian diaspora communities in Portugal over there. Finally, going over to Chinese migrants who are traversing the Ecuador to the US-Mexican border route. Many Chinese migrants have been picked up on the US side, have handed themselves in. Nearly more than nearly 7,000 Chinese migrants have taken this brutal migrant route from Ecuador through the Darien Gap, where there's many rapes and abductions and killings that happened there, and then through Central America, through Mexico to the US border. The Chinese authorities, of course, on their part, have made a statement that they are against quote-unquote illegal migration. And here's another people, the global proletariat. I mean, yes, it's true that the people on migrant routes often are not the poorest from the global south, because they can raise the money of £6,000 to £10,000 to pay people traffickers, but nevertheless they are still part of the global working class, and they have no support and representation and political leadership at all. It's not just Chinese people, it's Nepalis, Bangladeshis, Pakistanis, Afghans, and other Africans and other just working class people from the global south who are taking the Ecuador migrant route through Central America, which is very sad to see. But we send our solidarity to these people, and they deserve political advocacy and organization in the interest in the anti-colonial, anti-racist framework against the connected regime of colonial borders across the world. So sad to see that we haven't got leadership on this issue. It's very sad, but arguably we haven't got leadership in all the primary issues of the anti-colonial, anti-racist, socialist challenges of the people of the world right now in history. Counter-Narrative News, we're wishing everyone a fantastic weekend. Please continue to support us by encouraging your friends and contacts to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter at _CNN. All the best.